What is up, guys? We're going to be taking a look at this lab, password brute force via password change. This is fairly straightforward. There's an issue with the password change functionality that allows us to brute force the victim's password. So we fired up the lab. We're here at the login page. We do have a set of valid credentials, username Wiener, password Peter. Let's log in. We get taken to the account page where we get the option to change the password. Now, there is some brute force protection in place here. Let's say, for example, I enter the wrong password for current password. Then I type two new passwords that match. Then I choose change password. So long as the new and confirm boxes match, if the current password is incorrect, then we actually get locked out of the account. This is fairly extreme. What most web apps will do is say, well, your original password's not correct. We're not going to change the password. What this web app does is say, well, your original password's not correct. We're going to lock you out of the account for a whole minute. Not usually functionality that you see. It's overkill in this case. But despite that level of overkill, there's a vulnerability in the way this works. You see, if we enter an incorrect password, then for the new and confirm fields, we type a password that doesn't match and then choose change password. We now get the message, current password is incorrect. So despite not knowing the current password, since the new password and confirm password fields didn't match, instead of being locked out of the account, we simply get a message flashed to the page, current password is incorrect. So although that minute timeout would have ordinarily deterred us from attempting to brute force the victim's password, now since we have a way of determining whether the password is incorrect, without being locked out of the app, we can brute force this. Now, what we're really looking for here is a slightly different message. See, the current password is incorrect. If we try that again with the correct password, so password Peter, now let's once again add passwords that don't match for new and confirm fields. Let's choose change password. We now get the message, new passwords do not match. So the fact we're getting a different message here is confirming that the current password is correct. We have everything we need to brute force the victim's password in this case. So I've sent a copy of the request to the Burt repeater. In terms of the body of this post request, we're going to change the username parameter to Carlos because Carlos is the victim in this case. Current password, this is what we're trying to guess. So we're going to insert payload markers around this parameter. And we simply need to ensure that the new password 1 and new password 2 don't match, because if they match, then we could end up being locked out of the account for a minute. So I've called password 1 test and password 2 test 1. These are never going to match. So we're simply going to get feedback from the web app regarding whether the password is correct or not for the account Carlos. Now let's configure our payloads. This particular list of payloads is given by Portswigger for use with this web app. So we just pasted those in. And another thing we can do is we can grep the output for a specific match. I'm just going to clear what's there currently. And what we're looking for is the string new passwords do not match, because this implies that the current password is correct. Otherwise, we would get a different message saying that the current password is not correct. So when we get the message new passwords do not match, it means the current password is correct. We can then open up that request and simply extract the victim's password. So let's add that grep rule. Now it's simply a case of starting the attack, and we are looking for a match in that column, new passwords do not match. So we should see a 1 in that column, and when we see that 1, it means we're aware of the victim's password. So you can see we have a match here, and that was with the payload 123456789 And just taking a look at the output there, we should see that string that we grepped for new passwords do not match. This means that this payload is Carlos's password. Now, the objective of this lab is simply to log in as Carlos. We're going to make sure we're logged out of our account. Let's go to my account again. Username, Carlos, password, 123456789 log in. Then we get the flag, congratulations, you solved the lab. So in summary, we can see that there was some brute force protection in place. In fact, that protection was completely overkill for what it did, but there was a way of just sidestepping that particular aspect of the brute force protection, allowing us to just run a pure brute force attack on the victim's password in this case. Mitigation here is really just to fix the back-end logic. You see, if we were just locked out of the account every single time our current password was correct, regardless of whether the new passwords matched, then we would have some brute force protection in place. We'd have to wait a minute between subsequent requests. That might not be a big deal if you have a fairly concise password list provided by Portswigger. You could still brute force. But in terms of the actual length of a password list in the wild, it just becomes impractical to brute force this web app. Having said that, it is a little bit extreme to lock the user out immediately. This is something you might do after several failed attempts at changing the password with an inaccurate current password. So you might at least give the user 3 opportunities to get the current password right. Immediate lockout followed by a 1-minute freeze. A little bit extreme in this case and not something you typically see in a web app. All right, thanks very much for checking out the content. Hope it was helpful. Catch you guys in the next lab.